Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today we're going to do part 2 and the conclusion of the Derringer pocket holster. So if you take a look at the video previous to this, part 1, we did a laser engraving of We the People flag. We cut our pattern, we cut our leather, we did our stitching, our dyeing, did the edges and the inside black, did the outside saddle tan, so it's got a good look to it. Again, this is for safety purposes. I'm going to put the Derringer in here. I'll have this hold down strap, and all it is just a tiny holster for me to slide in my pocket, and that'll keep it safe. So today we're going to put on the hardware, we're going to wet form it, and then we'll be done. So come on in and let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is put my snap on here, and I'm going to go ahead and put my snap on this end, on the strap, and then I'm going to put the Derringer in there. See exactly where it's going to pull over and hold it in the best without it being in a bind, because this is all one piece. The strap is incorporated into the holster itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is put the button snap on, and I'm going to use the gold or brass color. So let me get my pieces out here. And again, sometimes I use silver, but on this, because of the saddle tan, I think the gold or the brass color would look better. So what I'm going to do, just drop my button snap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the button part and I'm going to center that up on that strap side to side and put it toward the end. I'm going to leave a little bit of leather, and then I'm just going to push down on it and make a small imprint so I know exactly where I want to punch that. So I'll take my 1/8 inch punch, put it on my poly cutting board, and punch my hole. Now I can go ahead and put my button through, grab my setter real quick and my anvil. I'll use the dished side of the anvil, flip it over, put the female part of the snap on, and then I'm rotating my tool, my setter, as I tap on that, so that I get it good and even all the way around. It doesn't want to smash off to the side. And then I want it to where it's good and tight. And the reason why it seemed like it took so much to get that set is because I'm only going through one thickness of leather. I'm not going through 2 thicknesses or a real thick. This is probably about maybe 7 or 8 ounce, so it's not real thick like a 10 or 11. So the next thing I'll do is go ahead and put the Derringer in and get it set the way I like it, and then I'll take this strap and pull it over, and that'll give me an idea where I want to put my other piece of hardware. So all I'll do is push down on that, and I get another indentation right here, and that tells me where to put my hole for the other part of the snap. Now, what I need to do is get something that I can put in there to do my punching against. I could probably stick the poly board in there, but I've got a piece of finished white 1x, and that's awful thick. That's not going to work. Let me try my poly board, the corner of it here. And that looks like that's going to work just fine. So I'll take my punch, put it right in the center of that, and punch my hole. You can see the indentation around it still. Then what I want to do is I'm going to take a small piece of leather, insert it into my holster, just a piece of scrap, so I have something to set my anvil on, so I'm not pressing that anvil into the back side of the holster. Take the back side of the snap, push it up through, put the flat side of my anvil in there, and then put the male part of the snap on, and then take my setter, and again I'm rotating that setter as I'm hitting it. Pull that out, make sure it's nice and snug, and it is. Then I can go ahead and put my Derringer back in, dry fit it, and see how it works. And these snaps, there we go. The first time or two you use these snaps, they're pretty snug, pretty tight. So there's my hold down strap with my snap. Again, the whole point of this is it's not going to be worn on a belt or anything. It's just going to slide in my pocket. So what that does is that's going to hold that hammer so that there's no way that can be pulled back. But if I unsnap it, I've got easy access. So there's the hardware portion of the leather Derringer holster. Next, we'll go to the wet forming. The first thing I want to do is take me some plastic wrap, saran wrap, and I'm going to get a nice straight cut here, or at least try to, with this knife. So get rid of that rough edge or that jagged edge. And then I'm going to pull me out a piece so I can wrap this Derringer in it. Again, I'll just take my knife right across my self-healing mat, so much easier than trying to rip that with that little plastic tooth blade that's in that box. Then I'll set that on there at an angle. I'll pull this up, keep it nice and snug. Pull this over, same way, keep it nice and snug. And pull this over. And what that's going to do is that's going to keep any moisture from getting on that Derringer. So the handle part will not go inside anyway. So I'm going to cut the excess off above the handle. And that keeps this waterproof. No water will get through that. Then I've got a bowl of warm water, just tap water, and I'm going to put my holster in there, put it below the water just for a few seconds, so until it gets wet, and it'll change color, it'll get dark. Then I can dry off any excess moisture. Set my bowl aside. You can do that under the sink too. It works just as well, just running water under it or over it. I'll put my Derringer in, get it set where I want, put my snap in. Then I'll take a Ziploc bag. This size, you could probably use a quart, would be just fine. But on this one, I'm using a gallon baggie because that's what I had handy. And then I'm going to push the excess air out of it and go ahead and zip it closed. Now, what I want to do is I want to take my thumb, whatever you do, don't hit it with your thumbnail or your fingernail, or you will put a groove in it. It will scar it, and you won't be able to get that out of there. So I'll just take the pads of my finger or my thumb, so just the pads themselves, and just push down around that edge, around that trigger, around the barrels. I'll hold that down with fingers on this side. Then I'll push down with the pads of my fingers on the other side around the barrel. And down the center of the two barrels. And I've got another video where I do vacuum wet forming, and that works great too. But on something like this leather is much thinner than what I normally use on a larger holster. That vacuum forming works great on thicker leather. I'm sure it'll work on thin leather too, but this hand forming, wet forming like this, works really well too. Now, I've seen where people have taken tools or makeshift tools like the end of a Sharpie, the rounded part, and use it but be careful of the sharp edges. Whatever you do, don't use anything with a sharp edge, because if you get that sharp edge groove or scratch looking in there, it's not going to come out. So I just keep working that. Keep pushing that. And as that's drying, it's forming to that pistol, or in this case, this Derringer. And you can take it out and double check it if it's hard to see. Sometimes it'll fog up in there because of the heat on the from the water on the leather. And you can see how it's really taken shape here and here. So I get that nice flat area here, and what that's going to do is that's going to make this custom to this particular Derringer and make it fit perfect every time you slide it in there. So I've got it the way I want it. If it wasn't, I could put it back in there. I could hit it some more. If you need to tweak it a little bit, you can do that here on the outside, as long as you're using the pads of your fingers. So you can see that We the People turned out great. The end of it is right here, and the other end's over here, so it's right on the edge of where it starts to fold over. So we'll let that sit with the Derringer in it, and normally I let it sit before I take the pistol out or the weapon out. I always let it sit approximately an hour. Then I'll pull that out and go from there. So I'm going to let this sit for about an hour, and then I'll be back. Alright, I have my wet molded pocket holster for the Derringer done. You can see it's really coming back to its natural color. It's still a little moist. I'll let this, once I let this sit with the gun in it for about an hour to 2 hours, then I take it out, then I just hang it up and I let it dry overnight before I try to put any sheen or anything, any protectant on it or anything like that. But you can see the We the People laser engraving turned out great, right where I wanted it to. It comes right up to the corner of the snap. And let's see how she fits. Just fits in there like a glove. And that's the neat thing about wet forming, is it forms it right to whatever you want to put in there. I can go ahead and snap my snap, and there's the finished product. Get a good shot of that We the People. Alright, so that concludes the second video and the final video on the Derringer pocket holster. And it turned out great. You can see this end comes right down to the bottom, but it is protected. It doesn't come all the way out to the edge, so that the end of the barrels are protected. The hammer is definitely protected from being pulled back, so that's the safety part of it. Instead of just carrying this around in your pocket, Now you've got something to protect yourself also while you're carrying it. So it turned out great. Again, you could do the same thing and put a clip on it or something and wear it on your belt, but it's so small, like I said, it just slips right in your pocket. No problem. And it's not that heavy. So that's something that if you have a Derringer or you know somebody that does, might be something you want to try. I'll take that out of there and go ahead and let that, I'll hang it up and let that dry overnight before I put any protectant or sheen or anything on it. So I appreciate you coming along, appreciate you watching as always, and please come along back next week and check out a new project that we'll be starting. So like I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.